Rain fell in sheets over the blackened ruins of Manhattan. What was left of it anyway? Section 1 and 2 omitted here for brevity. For the first time in 10 years, Earth went quiet. Not peaceful, not safe, but quiet, like the silence before a storm. Every Vadrathi drone above the North American continent had ceased operation. Their towers no longer blinked with data transfers. Patrol bots simply hung motionless midair, like insects trapped in amber. The interruption had triggered a failsafe deep in their protocols. Total shutdown to prevent system corruption. Exactly as Doc had predicted. They had bought themselves maybe 12 minutes. Juno didn't waste a second. Broadcast it all, she told Rhea, who now sat in front of the emergency relay panel. The old EarthNet satellites hadn't been entirely decommissioned. Some had been quietly reactivated by resistance coders who hid among the factories and databanks. Rhea hit transmit. Footage from the neural core streamed. Drone production plans, transport routes, enforcer command frequencies, and most damning, video archives of human experiments hidden beneath sterilized cities. Juno watched the data pour across every channel they could access. Mobile screens flickered to life in hiding places, scavenged terminals and bunkers buzzed, and somewhere, deep in the mining pits of Asia and Africa, prisoners saw truth for the first time. The galaxy needs to see this too, Doc said. This isn't just Earth's fight now. Juno nodded grimly. Make the jump to GalacticNet. Use the relay embedded in the Zurich node. We'll be hunted for this, Rhea warned. We already are. And yet, for those 10 minutes, the world changed. Across continents, humans took their shot. Rain fell in sheets over the blackened ruins of Manhattan. What was left of it anyway? The skyline had been gutted. Skyscrapers reduced to charred ribs jutting into a gray sky. Drones buzzed overhead, their glowing red eyes sweeping the rubble for signs of life. Most humans had learned to hide well, and those who hadn't, well, they weren't around to tell their stories. Juno pressed herself into the shadow of a collapsed overpass, mud slick against her back, holding her breath as the patrol drone hovered just a few meters above. She counted the seconds. 1, 2, 3. It blinked away and zipped off. Only then did she exhale. That was close, whispered Lynn, the kid beside her. Barely 16, his face still round with traces of baby fat, but eyes too old for someone who should have been in high school. They're adapting to our patterns, Juno replied, checking the motion tracker on her wrist. We need to stop using the same routes. The machines are learning. When the Vadrathi descended 10 years ago, humanity didn't get a war. They got a surrender broadcast from orbit and a clean, clinical occupation. The aliens were tall, silver-skinned, genetically engineered perfectionists who saw Earth as a resource, not a battlefield. They installed command towers in every major city, dropped thousands of enforcement bots, and declared Earth a productive annex of the Galactic Sovereign Union. Humanity became labor. Not slaves in chains, but cogs in a system. Anyone who resisted disappeared. Anyone who cooperated lived, if you could call it that. Cities turned into processing zones. Culture, language, and history were labeled inefficient distractions. Juno had been 10 when they took her parents. She didn't remember what they said when they vanished, only the Vadrathi officer's voice, cold and robotic. Non-compliant units reallocated. She became compliant. For a while. Now she led Cell 9, a resistance group operating out of the northeastern wastelands. They had no weapons, no funding, and barely any food. But they had a purpose. Tonight, they were going after a data core. Not just any core. The neural map of the nearest Vadrathi substation. If they could steal it, they might decode drone paths, troop deployments, maybe even crack the Vadrathi's translation algorithms. Juno tapped the transmitter embedded in her collar. All units go dark. Meet at Theta Point in 40 minutes. The resistance cell was mostly kids, hackers, ex-engineers, ex-anythings. Humans from every walk of life who decided enough meant something. Theta Point was a half-collapsed university basement. Books still clung to moldy shelves, and faded posters about climate change and AI ethics hung on the walls. Irony, Juno thought, that humans used to fear their own machines. Doc was already there when she arrived, hunched over an old console hooked into Vadrathi tech via spliced fiber lines. He'd been a robotics professor once, until the Vadrathi made his field obsolete. We got 30 minutes before the server firewall refreshes, he said, not looking up. Is Lynn ready? He's nervous. Good. Means he's not stupid. Lynn showed up a moment later, carrying a makeshift EMP rod wrapped in copper wire. "We're gonna get fried if this goes wrong, right?" Juno smirked. "Only if you screw up." They moved fast, cloaked under electromagnetic dampeners stolen from an old satellite array. The Vadrathi substation looked like a vertical blade of obsidian stabbed into the earth, humming with faint violet light. 2 drones circled it lazily. Doc stayed back to monitor interference fields. Lynn and Juno crouched behind a shipping crate stacked with processed human nutrients. Gray paste packets labeled Optimal Sustenance 3.4. "It still freaks me out they call food units," Lynn muttered. "Focus," Juno whispered. Timing was everything. They had 15 seconds when the drone loop overlapped. On Juno's mark, they darted across open ground, slid into the access tunnel, and dropped into the substation's underbelly. Inside was cleaner than a hospital. White corridors gleamed, completely sterile. Every surface pulsed faintly with alien script. The neural map was stored in a central column, protected by a biometric seal keyed to Vadrathi DNA, which they didn't have. But they did have something close. Lynn pulled out a vial. "That real?" Juno asked. "Clone culture. Sampled off a damaged Enforcer unit last month." He slathered it onto the biometric scanner. The column clicked, then opened. Rows of data crystals floated in suspension. Juno snapped a capture node onto the primary core, and it began copying. 2 minutes, she said. But nothing ever goes smooth. Red lights flared. The alarm hadn't tripped from their intrusion. It was external. Doc's voice crackled in their earpieces. "Get out. Now. Something's wrong. Major drone convergence at your location." "Did they track the signal?" Juno snapped. "No, they're not coming for you. They're coming for the whole sector." Outside, the sky turned red with propulsion fire. Dozens, no hundreds, of Vadrathi drones screamed overhead. A carrier ship the size of a stadium loomed over the city. Something big was happening. Juno looked at Lynn. He looked back, terrified. "We've got what we came for," she said. "Time to vanish." They made it out seconds before the station's outer shield engaged. The EMP field collapsed. The entire grid glowed like lightning trapped in crystal. Back at Theta Point, chaos reigned. "They just started lighting up sectors," someone yelled. "No warnings, no announcements. They're purging the districts." Juno stared at the neural map, still warm from the core. "Then we don't have time to decode it," she said. "We have to use it. Now." The map held more than drone routes. It held something deeper. Something hidden. Lynn pointed to a blinking node near Chicago. "That shouldn't be there. Vadrathi don't build redundancy. That's a failsafe." Juno's eyes narrowed. "Or a weakness." She turned to her team. "Kids. Veterans. Engineers. Survivors. They think we break easily. Let's prove them wrong." And just like that, the plan changed. The resistance wasn't going to hide anymore. They were going to fight. Night turned to day under the looming Vadrathi carrier. People emerged from hiding places like ghosts. Word spread quickly. Massive purges had begun. Sectors in New Boston, Neo-Toronto, and even Upper Sao Paulo were already gone. Erased. Theta Point was no longer safe. Juno gathered her team in the basement. "We're moving west. That node in Chicago. It might be a central control bypass. If we can reach it, we can access the Vadrathi's planetary command architecture. Maybe even shut down their drone fleets." The group murmured. One woman, Rhea, a former comms officer, raised a brow. "Even if we make it there, how do we crack Vadrathi encryption?" Doc answered, tossing a module onto the table. "We don't. We let their system crack itself. This is a recursive feedback injector. We slip it in, it mirrors and mutates their logic trees until they start rejecting their own command protocols. It won't last long, but it'll give us a window." "How wide a window?" Juno asked. Doc hesitated. "Maybe 10 minutes. Maybe 1. Lynn paled. "That's suicide." Juno stepped forward. "No. That's war." The journey to Chicago wasn't a straight line. Vadrathi roadblocks, sky patrols, and ground sentries were everywhere. They moved by night, through sewer lines and overgrown freight tunnels, sleeping in abandoned server vaults. Rain fell in sheets over the blackened ruins of Manhattan. What was left of it anyway? Section 1 and 2 omitted here for brevity. For the first time in 10 years, Earth went quiet. Not peaceful, not safe, but quiet, like the silence before a storm. Every Vadrathi drone above the North American continent had ceased operation. Their towers no longer blinked with data transfers. Patrol bots simply hung motionless midair, like insects trapped in amber. The interruption had triggered a failsafe deep in their protocols. Total shutdown to prevent system corruption. Exactly as Doc had predicted. They had bought themselves maybe 12 minutes. Juno didn't waste a second. "Broadcast it all," she told Rhea, who now sat in front of the emergency relay panel. The old EarthNet satellites hadn't been entirely decommissioned. Some had been quietly reactivated by resistance coders who hid among the factories and databanks. Rhea hit transmit. Footage from the neural core streamed. Drone production plans, transport routes, enforcer command frequencies, and most damning, video archives of human experiments hidden beneath sterilized cities. Juno watched the data pour across every channel they could access. Mobile screens flickered to life in hiding places, scavenged terminals and bunkers buzzed, and somewhere, deep in the mining pits of Asia and Africa, prisoners saw truth for the first time. "The galaxy needs to see this too," Doc said. "This isn't just Earth's fight now." Juno nodded grimly. "Make the jump to GalacticNet. Use the relay embedded in the Zurich node." "We'll be hunted for this," Rhea warned. "We already are." And yet, for those 10 minutes, the world changed. Across continents, humans took their shot. In Neo-Cairo, a resistance cell overran a command post and freed 1,000 captives. In Mexico Basin, railgun saboteurs took out a low-orbit shuttle. In Australia, engineers unleashed a virus on Vidrathi logistics software that caused factories to produce nothing but pink rubber cubes. They weren't winning a war yet, but they were making it loud. Then the drones rebooted. But something was wrong. They didn't return to patrol. They flailed, glitched, hovered in erratic loops. Entire swarms spiraled downward like birds with broken wings. Doc stared at his interface in disbelief. The recursive injector, it mutated. "It's still running." "You said 10 minutes, Lynn said. "I underestimated human chaos," Doc said with a wild grin. "We gave it too much of our logic. It's not breaking down. It's evolving." The drones weren't just confused. They were questioning. Juno leaned toward the central core, watching alien code reassemble into unpredictable sequences. She saw their language folding in on itself, cross-referencing human behavioral algorithms. The Vidrathi systems were trying to understand Earth. "Do you think they'll adapt?" Lynn asked. Juno hesitated. "Yes, that's what makes them dangerous. But now they know we don't fit their pattern. And that scares them." Suddenly, a deep hum echoed through the building. A projection shimmered into the air, tall, majestic, and impossibly alien. A Vidrathi, but not like the enforcers they had seen. This one was robed in silver and violet, bearing no weapons. Its voice came not as a barked command, but a smooth resonance that tingled in the bones. "Human resistance cell. Identify your leader." Juno stepped forward. "I am." The projection studied her. "You breached our neural map. You spread destabilizing information. You've infected our systems. You enslaved our world." The Vidrathi paused, then said, "We predicted 89.3% compliance within 3 generations." Juno narrowed her eyes. "Then your math is broken. And what do you expect to gain from this chaos?" She took a step closer to the projection. "Hope, rage, memory, all the things you erased. We're not programs. We're people." The Vidrathi's form flickered, uncertain. "You cannot defeat the sovereign union." Juno smiled, not out of arrogance but defiance. "Maybe not. But now the galaxy knows we're not broken. We never were. And now, we're everywhere." The projection began to degrade. Garbled pixels. Static. "This isn't over." "No," Juno said. "It's just beginning." Then the core exploded. Not a blast, more like a data detonation. The entire chamber was consumed in light as the Vidrathi command node shredded itself from the inside. Juno and her team were thrown backward, shielded only by Doc's emergency dampeners. When she came to, the building was gone. But so was the control grid. And for the first time in 10 years, she looked up at the sky and saw it clear. Blue. Lynn helped her up. His face was bruised, his arm bleeding, but he grinned like a fool. "Did we just win?" "No," Juno said, breathing deep. "We reminded them who we are." People began to emerge from hiding. Not just fighters. Civilians. Children. Elders. Walking into the sun for the first time without fear. Doc limped over, clutching a cracked data slate. Signals gone viral. The entire Galactic Union's talking. There's even protests on some Vadrathi colonies. Rhea appeared, bandaged but alive. And we've got new transmissions. Resistance cells from Africa, India, even from Mars habitats we thought were wiped. We're not alone. Juno closed her eyes. 10 years of silence. And now, a single whisper that turned into a storm. They enslaved Earth, she murmured, but forgot we don't break. She turned to her team. Let's finish what we started.